Hablo con ella.
They say the Grand Canyon holds secrets. For decades, there have been whispers about a hidden city beneath the mighty canyon. Stories of underground chambers, Egyptian relics, and ancient hieroglyphs etched deep into the rock. Campfire legends told for generations. Theories spun by treasure hunters. Some swore the government was hiding something, covering up an ancient civilization, maybe even a portal to somewhere else entirely. But for the cattle ranchers scratching out a living on the high desert north of the canyon, stories like that didn't matter much. They were too busy running a ranch to care about ancient myths or secret cities. Just early mornings and long days. Tyler Jensen was one of those ranch kids, a husky, awkward 24-year-old with a face that always looked halfway between lost and trying to impress someone who wasn't looking. His family had homesteaded near the Arizona Strip generations ago, first as sheep herders, then cattlemen, scraping together a life in a remote stretch between red cliffs and dry desert. Lately, Tyler had been screwing up more than usual. He'd left a water line running, crashed his father's new skid steer, even narrowly missed shooting his brother's foot off during target practice. But the worst came when the drilling crew arrived to punch test holes. They were in dire need of finding water after their main well dried up last spring. Tyler had forgotten to latch the west corral. 6 calves and a bull wandered straight through the drilling site just as the crew was getting started. One knocked over a line of flags. Another ran out in front of the equipment, forcing the foreman to kill the engine. Everything had to shut down while the cattle were herded back. No one yelled, not even his father. William Jensen didn't need to raise his voice. A single glance from that sunburnt face, leathered by time and resentment, carried more weight than words. He handed Tyler the walkie-talkie, adjusted his hat, and nodded west. 2 calves wandered off this morning, he said. Find 'em before dark. Tyler didn't need to ask why he'd been given the job. He knew the drill. Screw up big enough, and his father found a quiet way to make him disappear for a while. Let things cool down. Let the grown men work. So Tyler slung a jug of water into the side-by-side and tore across the desert, sweat stinging his eyes and failure nipping at his heels. About 20 miles out, Tyler was deep in the Arizona Strip now, an uncharted stretch of high desert wedged between the Grand Canyon and the Utah border. It was a place few dared to venture, with no paved roads. Towering sandstone cliffs cast long shadows over forgotten valleys, and the land rolled endlessly toward the horizon. Mount Trumbull rose in the distance, a lone volcanic giant watching over the desolation like a sentinel. Somewhere beyond that, the ground fell away into the abyss of Torowep Overlook, hundreds of vertical feet of sheer nothingness down to the valley below. There were no towns here, no fences, no signs of life, except for the occasional watering hole. This was no man's land, and once you crossed into it, you were on your own. Tyler was beginning to doubt the cows had made it this far when his radio cracked to life. A monsoon thunderstorm was rolling toward him across the valley. There was no voice, just humming, deep and primordial. He assumed it was static from the approaching storm. The outflow winds were already forming, a wall of dust stampeding across the desert. Sand skittered across the ground in serpentine streams. Tumbleweeds were tossed violently, only to be shredded in mid-flight. Tyler knew these winds weren't something to mess with. Summer monsoons out here in the Strip weren't just storms. They were invasions. As he raced his side-by-side deeper into the wilderness, he was heading straight into the storm, but he was determined to find the missing calves. As the clouds thickened over the Arizona Strip, Tyler met a man on the dusty road, a Jeep kicking up miles of dust behind it. Tyler recognized it. It was Carl. Wild-eyed, sun-weathered, and talking a mile a minute. His family owns the Desert Rim Ranch, and he was a self-proclaimed treasure hunter, conspiracy theorist, and part-time YouTube vlogger. He had a deep belief in the Spanish Trail, lost treasure, and the Egyptian civilization buried beneath the Grand Canyon. Carl leaned out the window, his voice half drowned by the wind. "Howdy, Tyler. Storms coming fast, flash floods, lightning, hell of a mess. You don't want to be caught out here when it hits. Weird things happen during monsoons out here." He pointed back toward the North Rim, toward legends and shadows. He said he'd seen something strange last night. Lights and low rumbles from the canyon. He thought he was close to finding the lost pyramids that have been hidden for decades. "I think the real entrance is somewhere off the Strip," he yelled. "Maybe even under us right now." The whole encounter lasted less than a minute. Carl gunned the engine and vanished down the dirt road, trying to outrun the storm he swore was created by the government to keep him from finding the cave entrance. Tyler sat there, watching the clouds swirl, unsure what was more unsettling, the storm or the conviction in Carl's voice. He kicked the off-road vehicle into high gear and sped deeper into the desert. The sky cracked open with a blinding bolt of lightning, so close it lit the landscape in a flash of white fire. Thunder followed instantly, a deafening crack that shook the earth beneath Tyler's tires. He barely had time to react. The trail curved sharply around a sandstone outcrop, the far edge giving way to a drop-off. Loose gravel scattered under the tires as Tyler yanked the wheel to stay on the path. But it was too late. The wheels lost traction. For one frozen second, time slowed. Gravel sprayed behind him like sparks. The machine flipped and rolled, taking Tyler with it, barreling toward the edge. His head snapped back against the seat as the side-by-side twisted in a blur of metal and dust. Sky. Dirt. Sky again. The world spun around him as rocks and dust flew in every direction. Sharp desert shrubs tore at his arms as blood and sand filled his mouth. When the vehicle stopped, silence followed. Except for the roll of thunder and the quiet tick of the cooling engine. Tyler blinked up at the sky. His ribs ached. His head throbbed. Above him, storm clouds boiled like smoke, and he closed his eyes in pain. He came to just as the last light was fading. He was teetering on the edge of the cliff, blood dripping from his brow. He had no idea what condition the vehicle was in. No cell service, no signal, and his radio was smashed in the crash. That's when the gravity of his situation hit him. He sat, assessing his surroundings, when out of the corner of his eye, Tyler caught a flicker. Just a flash, but enough to catch his attention. The rock outcropping beside him shimmered, then flickered. Then it was solid again, like a glitch. He blinked and rubbed his eyes. No way. Maybe he'd hit his head harder than he thought, because for a split second, that entire rock had vanished. It pulsed in and out, like bad reception on an old TV. Wincing, he moved toward it. Slowly, carefully. He reached out. His fingers went straight through, but nothing was there. The rock wasn't a rock at all. He waved his hand again. Same thing. His eyes insisted something was there. but his hand passed through empty air, a void, hidden behind some kind of illusion. Was it a projection or a hologram? Was the lightning interfering with it somehow? But who would create an illusion of a fake boulder in the middle of the desert? And more importantly, why? He had to find out. So he stepped forward, right through the flickering projection, and hiding behind it was a door carved into the canyon wall. A weathered old iron door with rivets recessed deep into the rock, no handle and no hinges. What was it doing here? He stepped closer, pulse racing. The stone above his head lit up as an eerie shimmer of blue shone down and swept over him in a silent wave. It felt like a scan. The light hovered over a tattoo on his forearm. A low mechanical hum stirred from deep within the rock. Then a slow hiss, and a deep, echoing thunk. Tyler flinched as a series of clicks echoed from the door, like something unlocking in stages. With a final hiss, the airtight seal broke and the thick metal slid open, releasing a rush of dense air that surged past him, cool and tinged with the sharp scent of ozone. From the doorway, he saw a glow of amber and blue light within. He took a cautious step forward and glanced down at his forearm. The tattoo on his skin, his family's brand, was glowing. A looping, geometric symbol. He never really knew where it came from, but he always thought it looked cool. And now, it was bathed in blue light. This door didn't just open for him, it recognized him. What Tyler stepped into was nothing like any cave he had ever explored. The silence was uncanny. No echoes, no drifting dust in the air. This wasn't a natural formation, and it wasn't man-made either. The pristine stillness felt like a time capsule. Too perfect, too untouched. Once inside, the door closed and resealed behind him, and the air thickened as a gentle pressure pressed against his eardrums, like sinking into a deep pool. The cave's comfortable temperature and dampness clung to his skin. He called out instinctively, "Hello? Is anyone here?" Though he wasn't sure what he'd do if someone actually answered. But there was no reply, not even an echo. A long corridor lit up, not by bulbs, but by something responding to his presence. Was it motion activated? The air, while thick and dense, seemed to respond to his breath. The floor adjusted to his weight, as if measuring him. Along the walls, thin amber lights pulsed slowly and deliberately, like a heartbeat, as if the whole cave was alive. He reached a fork in the cave. He couldn't explain it, but he knew without question that he needed to go left toward the long, winding path. His feet moved without thought. Every turn felt familiar, mapped in muscle and instinct. But he had never been here before. So how did he know? At the end of the path, he moved deeper into the first chamber, where a subterranean pool gleamed, its crystal-clear surface reflecting towering stalactites that arched like Gothic spires. The water was flawless, revealing delicate calcite formations, undisturbed by ripples or debris, a relic he was too afraid to touch. In each new space, a blue light scanned him. Then the room would illuminate with a flawless ambient glow. Yet there were no light fixtures and no visible light source. And all around him was a hum. Was it the deafening silence ringing in his ears, or was the cave breathing with him? Another passage led to a second chamber, where the walls glowed with patches of spongy bioluminescent fungi that was clinging to every surface. Touching the wall, Tyler felt the fungi's slick and yielding texture, like damp moss under his fingers. Further in, the space widened and defied human logic. A forest of trees grew from the walls, and pools with waterfalls flowed from nowhere into nowhere. Everything was pristine, perfectly preserved, and impossible. But it wasn't until the third chamber that Tyler understood. The cave wasn't just reacting, it was reading him. The walls shifted, then lit up with realistic, flickering images. It was his old bedroom, the porch swing from his childhood, and Tango, his dog, his childhood best friend, bounding toward him, tail wagging like always. Tyler dropped to his knees, arms outstretched. But just before he could touch him, Tango vanished into air and light. He stayed there for a while, sitting on that porch, surrounded by the scent of desert and childhood. Watching Tango chase chickens and lizards across the yard, dreaming of what could have been if he hadn't always taken the easy way out, if he'd just made better choices. Here, he wasn't a disappointment. Here, he could be anyone he wanted. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice stirred, urging him to move on. Before he could leave, the cave shifted again. This time, it wasn't the past staring back at him. It was the future. The room darkened and began projecting larger-than-life images above him. He saw an older version of himself, stronger, grounded, standing tall with clear eyes and a steady heart, not haunted by regret, not awkward. And somehow, in that glimpse of who he might become, Tyler found what he didn't know he was looking for: confidence. Overhead, stars shimmered across the ceiling. Or maybe there was no ceiling. Maybe he was standing beneath the galaxy itself. He was so captivated by the glittering stars overhead that he didn't see the translucent orb until he walked right into it. It shimmered, full size, almost invisible. As he brushed against it, a section of its surface silently parted. Without thinking, he stepped inside. The opening sealed behind him. No door, no seam, no way out. He was trapped. There were no buttons or controls, only translucent walls inside an orb that was somehow weightless and floating. Remembering how the cave door and every room had scanned his tattoo, he wondered if it was a key. He raised his forearm. A sweep of electric blue light passed over his body, then paused at the ink on his skin, lingering as if reading it. The orb responded and began to float silently through the chamber. Above him, the ceiling was still open to the stars, distant, endless, and yet impossibly close. The sensation was unreal. It felt like a ride, strange and thrilling, like something out of an amusement park. The orb slowed and came to a stop and opened. As he stepped out, the room once again illuminated to reveal glowing walls, but this time they were meticulously etched with luminous drawings and strange markings, none of it in English. There were no words, just shapes, diagrams, star maps, blueprints, and symbols like ancient hieroglyphs that pulsed faintly. Tyler turned in a slow circle. He couldn't read any of it, and yet, it all felt eerily familiar. In one corner of the room, a single image stood out from the rest, larger, almost vibrating with energy. It called to him as he stepped closer, drawn without understanding why. He shook his head in disbelief. Etched into the wall was a near-perfect replica of the branding symbol from his family's ranch, twisted, knotted, and unmistakable. The same symbol inked on his forearm. Beneath the symbol, the wall revealed what looked like a map, etched into the surface with glowing, fluid lines. His heart skipped. It resembled the area of his family's property. Faint outlines of ridges, roads, pastures, and fence lines were traced in soft light. But it was the network beneath the property that caught his eye. Glowing blue channels branching underground like streams of water. They pulsed, as if they were begging to be noticed. How was his family connected to this? He had more questions than answers, and no one to ask. He reached out to touch the symbol on the wall, the one that bore resemblance to his family's brand, and the cave responded. The walls shifted, passages rearranged, pathways rotated like massive gears unlocking something ancient. The low hum that had been present the whole time began to rise, resonating, syncing with the rhythm of his own heartbeat. It wasn't just sound, it was communication or hallucination. He couldn't tell which. Tyler closed his eyes. He saw flashes of his ancestors and felt his breath slowing, syncing with the hum still echoing in the chamber. He felt a calm and stillness he'd never experienced before. But just as he became more entranced, everything seemed to stop. The orb dimmed, the symbols faded, the pulse was waning. As the glow left the walls and the air grew still, his whole body suddenly felt heavy. He looked down at his wrist and wondered how late it was, how long he'd been in the cave, but his watch was broken. And until now, he hadn't even noticed. He also hadn't noticed feeling cold or tired. No hunger or aches either. Not a single reminder that time was passing. It was as if time had paused inside the cave or held him in suspension. He turned, searching for the orb, the path, anything. But the chamber around him looked different now. The glowing diagrams were gone. The walls were just cold stone again. With all his senses on high alert, Tyler, for the first time in the cave, felt truly alone and oddly afraid. He took a shaky step back, eyes darting across the room. The walls felt oppressively closer now, like they were subtly inching inward. It suddenly felt wrong and unsafe. His back hit the wall. His chest rose and fell in shallow bursts. His heart thudded wildly, not from exertion, but from the raw, irrational spike of fear. "You're fine," he muttered aloud. "Get a grip." But a horrible thought crawled in. What if this place doesn't let me out? Where was out anyway? Tyler squeezed his eyes shut, grounding himself. Breathe. Just breathe. When he opened his eyes, he remembered that strange pull he'd felt when he first stepped into the cave. That sense of déjà vu, like his body had known where to go before his mind did. He didn't stop to question it. He took a breath and trusted that his feet knew the way. He came to a chamber that felt like a dead end. It had a towering waterfall cascading from the ceiling, its color an unnatural violet, glowing softly in the dim light. He felt disoriented. Maybe he didn't know where he was going after all. He approached the waterfall, hesitant, and reached out. His fingers passed straight through. No splash, no resistance, just air. Another illusion, another lie made of light. As he stepped through the shimmering projection, he nearly stumbled, because there it was again. The iron door he had entered through just a few hours ago, now illuminated by the same carvings and hieroglyphs he'd seen earlier. He moved toward it slowly, unsure if it would open, unsure if he wanted it to. The moment he came close, the same blue beam swept over his body, pausing once more on the mark inked into his skin. It hummed softly with recognition or permission, and the door unsealed and slid open. Blinding sunlight spilled into the cave. Tyler stepped out into the sweltering glare of the desert. The door closed, and it was all gone. Sunlight and dry heat hit him like a slap. His boots found the dust. The wind cut across his face. The scent of recent desert rain replaced the metallic ozone of the cave. And now, fully back in the world, he felt everything. His muscles screamed. His head pulsed with pain, like something heavy had been pressing on it for hours. His throat was dry, and his lips were cracked and sunburnt. His body ached from the crash. He suddenly felt weak and exhausted. Whatever that place had done to him, it had worn off the moment he left it. Behind him, the sandstone rocks looked perfectly still. His watch ticked once, and then restarted. Tyler limped over to his side-by-side, half buried under wind-blown sand and mud, and collapsed next to it. The sun was already high when they found him slumped against the crashed vehicle, 20 miles out at the edge of a ridge. He had been missing for 5 days. The paramedics said it was a miracle. Dehydrated and most likely suffering from a concussion, but he was still alive. "There's no way he could have survived out here," one muttered. "No food, no water, not a chance." His mother came running over, tears streaming down her face. She threw her arms around him, sobbing like someone had come back from the dead. "Tyler," she cried, "we were so worried. Thought we'd lost you." Tyler shook his head, still trying to make sense of everything. "But I've only been gone 1 night. I crashed and took shelter in a cave," he said, confused. His father stepped forward, arms crossed, jaw tight, but with a trace of relief across his face. "We searched every cave out here, Tyler. Every single one, for 5 days. He let out a humorless chuckle. "Heck, even the cows came back before you did." "But this cave was different," Tyler insisted. "It wasn't just a cave. It had rooms, corridors. It even had our family brand embedded in the wall. There was some kind of scanner that read my tattoo, and an airtight iron door. It's right over there." He turned and pointed toward a jagged rock outcropping. He searched their faces, desperate for a flicker of belief. "I didn't imagine it. It's real. Right behind that rock. It's not actually a rock. It's just air. A hologram or something. Just touch it, you'll see." His dad walked over and pressed his hand to the stone. It was solid and real. The officers exchanged a glance. One of them nodded toward the cut on Tyler's forehead. "You're taking a ride to the hospital to get that gash checked. Might be more serious than it looks," he said carefully. "Could explain why you're starting to sound a little like Crazy Carl." Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but stopped. They didn't believe him. And now, he wasn't sure if he believed himself either. To them, he was just a kid who'd been missing for almost a week. Dehydrated, disoriented, maybe hit his head a little too hard. But deep down, Tyler knew what he saw, and no head injury could explain that. A few days later, the drill crew was back at the ranch, grumbling and grease-stained. Tyler stood on the porch, eyes fixed on the dry stretch of land that sloped just north of the old cattle fence. He hadn't slept much, not because of dreams, but because he couldn't stop thinking about that cave. The glowing map of his family's land, the one etched into the wall like veins of blue light. Water flowing beneath it. He could still see it. The water. The crew had spent weeks drilling to the west, where the water source had always been. As Tyler sat watching, he absent-mindedly traced the tattoo on his forearm. Deep down, he knew. The water wasn't there anymore. He moved slowly, almost in a trance, across the land toward the northern pasture. He passed each dry test hole like a trail of failure and stopped in a place no one had tested. No flags, no markers, just untouched ground. But it felt different, like something was humming beneath the surface. "This spot," Tyler called out, pointing firmly. "Drill here." His father let out a scoff. "What are you now, a water whisperer? That's solid granite. There's nothing there." But something in Tyler's eyes silenced him. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't guessing. It was confidence. Less than an hour later, a muddy gurgle sprouted from the earth, followed by a steady stream, clean, cold, pressurized water that glittered in the morning sun. The crew erupted in whoops and hollers. His father stared at the water, then at Tyler. "How'd you know?" he asked, breathless. Tyler just shook his head. "I saw it in the cave," he said with conviction. His father didn't say a word, just looked at Tyler, like he was seeing him for the first time. They stood in silence a moment longer. Then Tyler turned to his father. "Hey, where did our ranch brand come from?" His father blinked, still pulling himself out of his amazement. "What?" "The symbol," Tyler said, gesturing to his forearm where the tattoo curled beneath his sleeve. "You always said it was old, but who came up with it?" His father scratched his jaw, like he hadn't thought about it in years. "Your great-grandpa told me once. Said his granddad was out wandering the desert with Crazy Carl's great-great-grandfather, back before any of this was built. They stumbled on a stretch of rock with strange carvings and drawings, not like the usual petroglyphs around here. These were different, geometric, intricate, almost glowing in the light. The kind of thing you don't forget." Tyler's brow furrowed. "So he just made one of the symbols the ranch brand?" "Apparently, he became obsessed," his father said, almost chuckling. "Said it meant something, marked it on every fence post and wagon, swore the land had chosen it." Tyler went quiet. "Always seemed like nonsense to me," his father added, just before walking off. Later, when he was alone in the barn, his mom brought in one of his old scrapbooks. "You used to talk about this place when you were little," she said. "Said it whispered to you in your sleep." He flipped through crayon drawings of cattle, stars, and tractors. But there was also a sketch of a cave with orbs, and beneath it all, his family's ranch brand circled in glowing blue lines, just like the map in the dream. He didn't remember drawing it. He sat in silence, staring at the page long after the light outside faded to dusk. He reflected on the feeling he had inside the cave, when he wasn't second-guessing himself, when he felt aligned, when for the first time he believed he could become anything, without fear holding him back. That was real, wasn't it? He still didn't understand what happened in there. The scans, the way the entire cathedral seemed to know him and bear his family's brand, the strange stillness of time, like the world had paused 5 days. Just for him. Maybe he never would. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was a childhood dream. Or maybe some places are just part of your DNA. Time paused in that ancient, secret cave. Dreams tangled with memory, blurring the line between what we call truth and what we feel is real. If it feels real, does that make it so? In the end, the mind forgets, but the body remembers. The cave remembers too. And some questions were never meant to have answers.